Welcome back to CRIME-ALYZE. Today we are undertaking a comprehensive hour-long psychological deep dive into one of the most chilling, perplexing, and deeply studied crimes in modern American history. The November 13, 2022 murders of 4 vibrant college students in Moscow, Idaho. For years, the public has looked at the mugshot of Bryan Kohberger and asked one agonizing word: why? I want to repeat the word: why? Why did Kohberger do that? Why would a Ph.D. candidate studying the innermost mechanics of criminal justice, a man who sat quietly in university lecture halls, step inside an off-campus home and commit an act of such staggering, visceral brutality? Before we look at the dark transformation of his mind, we must anchor ourselves in the unyielding facts of the case to dispel the massive web of rumors that flooded the internet. Bryan Kohberger did not target 4 women. He took the lives of 3 young women and 1 young man. Madison Morgan, age 21, Kaylee Goncalves, age 21, Shanna Kernodle, age 20, and Shanna's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, age 20. In July of 2025, Kohberger formally pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder to avoid the death penalty, receiving 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Though he has since attempted to contest his conviction from behind bars, the legal reality is sealed. Yet, because he chose not to provide a definitive, detailed motive during his court allocation, the true psychological catalyst remains open to forensic analysis. Today, we are going to look past the courtroom exhibits and analyze the 3 distinct possibilities behind this crime. Was it a cold academic experiment to commit the perfect crime? Was it a visceral explosion of incel-driven rage and rejection? Or, most terrifyingly, did he suffer a profound neurological unraveling, a drug-induced or natural psychosis, where his brain completely slipped into an altered state of reality that neither he nor his brilliant professors ever realized was happening? To understand how a human mind reaches this point of total catastrophic collapse, we cannot look at the man he was in 2022. We have to go back to where the cracks in his psychology first formed. We must begin in his adolescence, exploring a harrowing transition from a severely bullied high school teenager to a young man gripped by a severe heroin addiction. This is where the invisible unraveling truly began. To fully comprehend the psychology of Bryan Kohberger, we have to look closely at his formative years at Pleasant Valley High School in Pennsylvania. Childhood friends and classmates who grew up alongside him paint a portrait of a teenager trapped in an agonizing cycle of social isolation and severe physical bullying. As a young teenager, Kohberger was heavily overweight, insecure, and socially awkward. Classmates recalled that he was an easy target for cruel taunts, often pushed around in the hallways or mocked openly for his appearance. This level of chronic childhood rejection does profound damage to a developing brain. When a young person is consistently treated as an outcast, their mind begins to interpret the social world not as a place of connection, but as a hostile, threatening battlefield. Then around his senior year, a dramatic and unsettling shift occurred. Kohberger lost over 100 pounds in a very short period. But he didn't just lose weight. His entire personality underwent an aggressive defense transformation. He took up boxing and began projecting a rigid, dominant, and often combative persona. Classmates noted that the formerly bullied boy had suddenly turned into a bully himself, frequently picking fights, analyzing people's vulnerabilities, and using verbal aggression to keep others at a distance. But behind this new tough exterior lay a much darker coping mechanism. To numb the immense emotional pain of his childhood, the severe anxiety of his social awkwardness, and the profound sense of emptiness he felt inside, Kohberger turned to heavy substance abuse. By his late teens, he had developed a severe, life-threatening addiction to heroin. Heroin is an opiate that completely rewires the brain's reward pathway, fundamentally altering emotional regulation, impulse control, and reality processing. For years, Kohberger lived in the criminal underbelly of drug addiction, a world defined by secrecy, desperation, and total emotional detachment. Though his family intervened and he eventually managed to get clean through rehabilitation, the neurological scars of heavy opiate abuse during key developmental years do not simply vanish. Whether an individual with this level of severe trauma and past addiction forces themselves into total sobriety to pursue a highly stressful academic career, the internal pressure can become a ticking time bomb. He replaced his addiction to substances with an all-consuming obsession with the human mind, specifically the criminal mind. He sought to understand the very darkness that had consumed his youth, completely unaware that his own psychological foundation remained fundamentally fractured. This brings us directly into our first major theory, the academic experiment. This theory suggests that Kohberger converted his intense theoretical knowledge of criminology into a real-world test to see if he could commit the perfect crime. After overcoming his drug addiction, Kohberger threw himself entirely into academia. He excelled, earning a master's degree in criminal justice from DeSales University, where he studied under world-renowned forensic psychologists before moving across the country to become a Ph.D. candidate at Washington State University. He became obsessed with serial killers, behavioral criminology, crime scene analysis, and digital forensics. In psychology, when individuals possessing dark tetrad traits such as narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy gains high levels of academic expertise in a specific field, it often breeds a dangerous God complex. Kohberger was learning exactly how the police catch killers. He learned about cell phone tower tracking, DNA transfer. He learned about that, and he learned about behavioral profiling. The theory posits that his intellectual hubris convinced him that he was vastly superior to everyday law enforcement officers. He believed he knew the rules of the game well enough to break them without getting caught. The most damning piece of evidence supporting this theory occurred months before the murders. Kohberger posted a highly specific clinical survey on Reddit targeting ex-convicts. He asked them detailed, intimate questions about how they selected their victims, what precautions they took before entering a home, and exactly how they felt during and after the commission of the crime. This was not the behavior of a normal student. It was a clinical, detached data collection process. The theory suggests that the off-campus home on King Road in Moscow, Idaho, wasn't just a house to him, it was his laboratory. He selected a chaotic, multi-person environment specifically because it would be a logistical nightmare for forensics to untangle. He wanted to prove that his theoretical mind could outsmart the entire criminal justice apparatus. However, this theory also highlights the ultimate collapse of academic hubris. When theoretical planning meets real-world visceral chaos, panic sets in. Kohberger's supposedly flawless plan unraveled instantly when he left behind a leather knife sheath on Madison Mogen's bed containing a single source of touch DNA on the snap button. His academic fantasy was entirely dismantled by his own real-world carelessness. While the academic experiment theory looks at the crime through a cold intellectual lens, our theory shifts the focus entirely to a visceral, deeply emotional catalyst, which is rejection, incel rage, and displaced jealousy. To understand this theory, we must analyze the stark contrast between Bryan Kohberger's internal world and the world of the victims inside the King Road house. The home was a bustling, highly social and lively off-campus residence filled with attractive, popular college students who epitomized the ultimate carefree university experience. It was a lifestyle of social acceptance, romance, and deep peer connection. The exact lifestyle that Kohberger, throughout his entire life, had been utterly locked out of. Forensic psychiatrists often point to the profile of an incel, an involuntary celibate, someone who harbors a deep toxic resentment towards society and specifically toward attractive women because they feel perpetually rejected. Kohberger's history of being an awkward, bullied teenager, combined with reports from local acquaintances who described his intensely creepy, aggressive behavior around women at local establishments, strongly aligns with this profile. Investigative details suggest that Madison Mogen may have been his primary point of fixation. She worked at a local restaurant, and there is high speculation that Kohberger may have encountered her, attempted to interact, and experienced a bruising rejection that reawakened all of his childhood trauma. When a narcissist experiences a severe blow to the ego, it triggers what psychologists call narcissistic rage. This rage explains the highly intimate choice of his weapon, a fixed-blade, military-style K-bar combat knife. A knife requires intense physical proximity, immense physical force, and results in an incredibly violent, bloody, and chaotic scene. You do not choose a combat knife if you want a detached clinical experiment. You choose a knife because you want to feel the life leave your victims. You choose a knife because you harbor a deep personalized hatred. The theory suggests that when Kohberger entered that home, he wasn't just killing individuals, he was actively punishing an entire demographic. He was venting decades of built-up resentment against the popular, beautiful people who he felt looked down on him. When Ethan Chapin and Shanna Kernodle unexpectedly crossed his path or woke up during the assault, his displaced aggression expanded instantly. He eliminated them not just as witnesses, but as extensions of the very social world he despised. That brings us to the third and perhaps most terrifying theory, an explanation that bridges the gap between Kohberger's history of drug use and his eerie ability to appear normal to his university professors. This is the theory of psychological deterioration, substance-induced psychosis, and a profound neurological phenomenon known as anosognosia. To fully understand this, we must look at Kohberger's lifelong documented neurological struggles. In online forum posts from his teenage years, Kohberger explicitly detailed his battle with a rare neurological condition known as visual snow, where his vision was constantly filled with a static television-like fog. Now that is a serious statement by Kohberger. In those same posts, he described experiencing severe depersonalization, a terrifying psychological state where he felt completely detached from his own body, completely devoid of human emotion, and entirely unable to feel remorse or connection to reality. These kinds of states of perception and emotion are classical perceptions that people experience who use drugs or heroin. Furthermore, unsealed court filings from his defense team revealed that official medical evaluations diagnosed Kohberger with autism spectrum disorder. This diagnosis highlights a brain structure characterized by extremely rigid thinking, severe difficulties processing social cues, and a profound struggle with emotional insight. Now, let us connect these underlying conditions to his extreme behavioral patterns in the months leading up to the crime. Cell phone tower records proved that Kohberger drove around the King Road neighborhood late at night at least 12 times before the attack. He was a severe chronic insomniac who would routinely go to the university gym at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. because his mind simply would not shut down. Chronic long-term sleep deprivation fundamentally alters brain chemistry, severely impairing the frontal lobe and actively mimicking the effects of borderline psychotic state. If Kohberger was utilizing heavy doses of legal sleep aids like Ambien or other prescription medications to manage his severe insomnia and anxiety, the side effects can be catastrophic. Ambien is notorious for causing intense parasomnias, sleepwalking, profound confusion, and sudden, uncharacteristic outbursts of extreme violence. So, the actions of Kohberger could indicate that he may have also taken Ambien or a similar legal drug. Alternatively, we must look at the high risk of a substance abuse relapse. Moving entirely alone to a brand new state to face the immense, grueling pressure of a Ph.D. program creates a perfect storm of isolation. If an ex-heroin user relapses into illegal drug use or misuses potent legal medications, such as Ambien, to cope, their fragile brain chemistry can experience a catastrophic break. This brings us to the core concept of anosognosia. Anosognosia is a neurological condition where an individual experiencing a severe mental break or a drug-induced psychosis is genuinely, completely unaware of their own altered reality. So what does that mean? When these people use illegal drugs or when they use legal drugs such as Ambien, the chemistry of their brains changes, and these people don't realize what changes and that their brains change. Some of them know that the chemistry of their brains might change, but they still feel the need or the urge to use these legal drugs or illegal drugs. So they know of the danger, but they still use these drugs. And they know of the dangers, but once they've used the drugs, the effects of the drugs are in some cases so slow and slim that the people who use these drugs, they don't realize a change in them. They don't realize a change in their brain or in their mind, because these changes just creep in very slowly. So, when a person slips into this state, they do not realize they are losing their mind. To them, their highly distorted paranoid thoughts and dark violent compulsions feel entirely logical, necessary, and normal. This explains the terrifying mystery of his masked functioning, of Kohberger's masked functioning. It explains how Kohberger could sit in a Ph.D. criminology class, interacting politely with brilliant professors like Dr. Catherine Ramsland, and Kohberger looking like an ordinary, articulate student. His professor saw the academic mask during daylight hours. His professors had no idea that when the sun went down, his mind was actively unraveling into a state of dark, insomniac, and psychotic obsession. To the outside world, he appeared stable, but internally he had slipped into an irreversible dark reality that he himself did not even recognize as insane. As we bring this comprehensive 60-minute psychological profile to a close, we are left to look at the intersection of these three powerful theories that I have just laid out for you in detail. Was Bryan Kohberger an arrogant academic trying to prove his superiority? Or was he a resentful outcast venting decades of incel-driven rage with these murders? Or was Bryan Kohberger a neurologically compromised individual who completely unraveled into a drug or sleep-induced psychosis that remained completely invisible to the outside world? So a lot of people who are under the influence of psychosis, they don't realize it themselves that they're in this psychotic state, and the people around them also don't necessarily recognize that. The terrifying reality of forensic psychology is that the answer is likely a toxic, compounding mix of all three above laid out theories. Bryan Kohberger's childhood trauma created the foundation of resentment and anger. His academic studies gave him the dangerous Hubrian tools to conceptualize a crime. And his severe insomnia, neurological conditions, and potential substance issues acted as the ultimate chemical trigger that pushed him over the edge into irreversible action. When he stood in that Idaho courtroom in July of 2025 and entered his guilty pleas, the mask was finally and permanently stripped away. Bryan Kohberger was sentenced to spend the rest of his natural life in a maximum security prison, locked away from the society he so desperately wanted to belong to, yet so deeply despised. The judge, in his final remarks, branded Bryan Kohberger a faceless coward, ensuring that Bryan Kohberger's legacy would not be one of intellectual brilliance or an outsmarted justice system, but one of absolute senseless tragedy. Bryan Kohberger did not commit the perfect crime. Bryan Kohberger committed a horrific act of human devastation, leaving an indelible scar on the town of Moscow, Idaho, and on the families of Madison, Kaylee, Shanna, and Ethan. Thank you for joining me for this deep dive episode on CRIME-ALYZE. Please drop a comment below and let me know which of these 3 psychological profiles you believe truly explains the mind of Bryan Kohberger. Again, please let me know in the comments below which of the above 3 theories, which of the above 3 psychological profiles that I've laid out for you, which of those do you believe explains the mind of Bryan Kohberger? Please click the subscribe button and please turn on notifications so that you don't miss any new videos which I will publish here for you. I will see you in the next case discussion. Until then, stay safe.